I used to wake up every morning dreading the alarm clock, counting down the years until I could finally retire. The thought of working another decade felt exhausting, like running a marathon with no finish line in sight. But then, something changed. I realized I didn't have to wait until my mid-60s to step away from the grind. With careful planning and a few smart moves, I retired at 55 with $500,000 in savings. And let me tell you, it wasn't because I had some high-powered CEO salary or a lucky lottery ticket. It was about making intentional choices, ones that anyone can make with the right guidance. If you're sitting there thinking, I could never retire early, I'm here to tell you, you might be surprised. Whether you're in your 50s, 60s, or even beyond, it's never too late to take control of your financial future. Maybe you're tired of the daily commute, or you're dreaming of more time with grandkids, travel, or just the freedom to wake up without an agenda. Whatever your reason, this video is for you. Now, I won't sugarcoat it. Retiring early takes discipline, but it doesn't mean you have to live like a hermit or pinch every penny until it hurts. It's about making your money work smarter, not harder. So, let's start with the first big step I took, the one that set everything else in motion. The first thing I did was take a hard look at my expenses. And I mean, really look. Most of us don't realize how much we're spending on things we don't truly need. The subscriptions we forgot about, the dinners out that add up, the little treats that become habits. I sat down with my bank statements and a highlighter, and let me tell you, it was eye-opening. I found over $200 a month going to things I barely used, gym memberships, streaming services, even a magazine subscription I hadn't read in years. Cutting those out didn't feel like deprivation, it felt like taking back control. But trimming expenses was just the beginning. The real game changer was downsizing my home. Now, I know what you might be thinking. I've lived here for years. I can't just pack up and leave. And I get it. For me, it wasn't an easy decision, but when I crunched the numbers, it made too much sense to ignore. My house was full of empty rooms, and the maintenance costs were eating into my savings. So I sold it, bought a smaller place outright with the proceeds, and suddenly, my biggest monthly expense, my mortgage, was gone. That alone freed up thousands every year. Of course, none of this would have mattered if I hadn't tackled debt head-on. Credit cards, car payments, they're like anchors dragging down your financial freedom. I made a simple rule. If I couldn't pay for it in cash, I didn't buy it. And any extra money I had, it went straight to paying off those balances. It wasn't glamorous, but let me tell you, the day I made my last credit card payment, it felt better than any shopping spree ever could. Now, you might be wondering, okay, but how did you make sure $500,000 was enough to last? That's where the next piece of the puzzle comes in, and it's all about making your savings work for you. But we'll get into that in just a bit, because before we talk about growing your money, we've got to talk about protecting it, and that means avoiding one of the biggest mistakes retirees make, a mistake that could wipe out your savings faster than you'd think. So, we've talked about cutting expenses, downsizing, and getting rid of debt. Those were the foundation. But here's the thing. Saving money alone won't get you to early retirement. You've got to make that money grow. And that's where a lot of people get nervous. They hear investing and think of Wall Street, sharks, or risky bets that could vanish overnight. But it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, the approach that worked for me was boring, steady, and most importantly, safe. Let's start with the stock market. Now, I'm not talking about picking hot stocks or timing the market. That's a surefire way to lose sleep and money. Instead, I focused on low-cost index funds, things like the S&P 500, which basically let you own a tiny piece of hundreds of companies at once. Over time, the market goes up, and so does your investment. No stress, no guessing games. I set up automatic contributions every month and let compounding do the heavy lifting. And here's the key. I never panicked when the market dipped, because history shows it always bounces back if you don't pull your money out in a hurry. But stocks alone weren't enough. I also put a chunk of my savings into bonds, which are like loans to the government or big companies that pay you back with interest. They don't grow as fast as stocks, but they're stable. Perfect for money I couldn't afford to lose. A good rule of thumb: the closer you are to retirement, the more you shift toward bonds. That way, if the market crashes right when you need cash, you're not forced to sell at a loss. Now, here's something most people don't think about until it's too late. Healthcare. If you retire before 65, when Medicare kicks in, you'll need a plan for insurance, and it can be expensive. I budgeted for this by using a health savings account, HSA, while I was still working. It's like a supercharged savings account, tax-free money going in, tax-free growth, and tax-free withdrawals for medical bills. By the time I retired, I had a nice cushion set aside just for doctor visits and prescriptions. And speaking of surprises, let's talk about the biggest threat to your nest egg: inflation. You might think $500,000 is enough today, but in 20 years, it'll buy a lot less. That's why part of my portfolio was in things that tend to rise with inflation, like real estate. I didn't go out and buy rental properties, too much hassle, but I did invest in REITs. Basically, funds that own apartments, offices, and shopping centers. They pay steady dividends, and when rents go up, so do my payouts. Of course, none of this matters if you're blowing through your savings too fast. That's where the 4% rule came in. It's a simple guideline. In your first year of retirement, you withdraw 4% of your total savings. $20,000 if you have $500,000. After that, you adjust for inflation each year. Statistically, this gives your money a great chance to last 30 years or more. I stuck to this like glue, no splurging on a fancy RV or a second home, because discipline today means security tomorrow. But here's the real secret. I didn't just rely on my investments. I found little ways to bring in extra cash without going back to a 9-to-5. Things like selling handmade crafts online, doing freelance work in my old field, but on my terms, and even renting out my spare room occasionally. It wasn't a fortune, but it stretched my savings further and kept me busy in a fun, low-pressure way. Now you might be thinking, this sounds great, but what if something goes wrong? And that's exactly what we'll cover next, because even the best plans need a safety net. Let's be honest, no matter how well you plan, life throws curveballs. A health scare, a market crash, a family emergency, any of these could derail your retirement if you're not prepared. That's why my final step was building a safety net. And no, I don't mean stuffing cash under the mattress, though a small emergency fund is smart. I'm talking about the kind of backup plans that let you sleep soundly, knowing you're covered. First up, the emergency fund. Even in retirement, I kept a year's worth of living expenses in a boring old savings account, not earning much interest, but instantly accessible. Why? Because if the market tanks and I need cash, I'm not selling investments at a loss. I can ride out the storm until things recover. It's like an insurance policy for my peace of mind. Next, I made sure my legal ducks were in a row. A will, a healthcare proxy, a power of attorney, all the paperwork no one likes to think about. But here's the truth. If something happens to you, your family shouldn't have to guess your wishes or fight over your assets. I spent a few $100s on a lawyer to get it done right, and now my kids know exactly what to do if I can't speak for myself. Priceless. But retirement isn't just about money, it's about living, and that's where so many people stumble. They dream of freedom, but when they get it, they feel lost. I'll admit, my first few months were weird. No deadlines, no meetings, just endless open days. I had to practice being retired. So I made a loose routine, morning walks, volunteering at the library, learning to paint, badly at first. The key was staying engaged without the pressure of a job. And let's talk about social connections. Work gives us built-in friends, and without it, loneliness can creep in. I made it a point to join a weekly card game group, call old colleagues for coffee, and even start a small book club. Those connections became my new water cooler chats, and they're just as important for your health as your finances. Now, after all this, you might wonder, was it worth it? Absolutely. Not every day is perfect, but waking up on my terms, whether that's gardening at sunrise or taking a spontaneous road trip, beats any paycheck. And the best part? You don't need $1 million to do it. You just need a plan, the guts to stick to it, and the wisdom to enjoy the ride. So if you're dreaming of early retirement, start today. Look at your expenses, tackle debt, invest wisely, and protect what you've built. And most importantly, don't wait for someday. Someday is now. If this resonated with you, let me know in the comments. What's your biggest retirement dream? And if you found this helpful, hit that like button and subscribe for more tips on living well with less, because you've worked hard your whole life. Now it's time to make the most of it. Here's to your freedom.